Welcome to Law Watch. My name is Raina, and I'm the legal assistant here at Coleman Jackson PC, a tax, litigation, and immigration law firm based in Dallas, Texas. And this presentation is word for word of a question and answer session that I had with Attorney Jackson, and I will only be relaying the information that Attorney Jackson and I discussed. So today's topic is what property of a taxpayer is exempt from an IRS tax levy. So a few weeks ago in our Legal Thoughts podcast, the attorney and I were discussing the IRS tax liens and levies and the difference between the two. So our podcast listeners seem to be more interested to hear more about these tax laws. Particularly, they want to know more about what properties owned by the taxpayer is not subject to an IRS tax levy. So if a person owes the IRS, can they take all of the property that a taxpayer owns and is likely to own in the future to pay off the tax debt that they have? So I want to know why the IRS can take people's property and what law gives the IRS the right to take a taxpayer's property. So the following is Attorney Jackson's answer. Under Internal Revenue Code Section 6331A, when a taxpayer owes unpaid taxes and refuses to pay the tax within 10 days after receipt of an IRS notice and demand for payment, the IRS can collect the unpaid taxes, penalties, and interest and cost of levy by taking all property and rights to property owned by the taxpayer, except for property that is specifically exempt from levy under Internal Revenue Code Section 6334. So on a podcast that Attorney Jackson did previously, he stated the differences between an IRS lien and a levy. The tax lien attaches automatically to all of the debt, the taxpayer's property and right to property. So this means that the lien follows the property wherever the property goes. The IRS, their authority to take taxpayers' properties and rights to property is a lot of power. That is powerful stuff. So this leads to question 2. Does this mean that the IRS can take a taxpayer's, let's say their shoes, their clothes, or any other apparel for an unpaid tax bill? And here's the answer. Internal Revenue Code Section 6334 provides a list of property exempt from IRS levy. So those types of items that are on the list of specifically exempted property are the ones I just mentioned. So the IRS cannot take wearing apparel that is necessary for the taxpayer and their household members to have an everyday living experience. So the IRS must comply with this exempt property list when they take a taxpayer's property. So question 3, what about other personal effects of the taxpayer other than wearing apparel? So this includes such as the furniture in their house and other personal effects. And here's the answer. Personal effects and household furnishings are exempt from a levy, but the exemption of personal effects, household furnishing, and such are limited to no more than $6,250 in value. That exemption value has not increased in decades, and in today's dollars is very low. So personal effects and household furnishing over $6,250 is subject to an IRS levy. In modern times, the IRS has avoided the optics of taking taxpayers' personal effects and furniture, but they can, under law, take anything that exceeds $6,250 in value. So if the personal effects and household furnishing threshold is so low, what about the taxpayer's residence? Can the IRS take the taxpayer's home for unpaid tax debts? And Attorney Jackson stated that the exempt laws are applicable to property used as a residence and is nuanced under Internal Revenue Code Section 6334. Sometimes they are exempt and sometimes they are not exempt. It depends upon the resident's fair market value. So to explain further, number one, IRC 6334 specifically exempts taxpayer residence in cases where the taxpayer owes $5,000 or less in back taxes and penalties and in interest. This exemption extends to residential property used by the tax debtor as well as property owned and rented to anyone else and used by them as a residence. Number two, IRC 6334 provisions and rules pertaining to the taxpayer principal residence. So this is the property where the taxpayer resides. Vacation homes do not qualify as a principal residence, but these are extremely nuanced. First, IRC section 121 defines the term principal residence, and second, the principal residence of the taxpayer is exempt from an IRS levy unless a United States District Court, a judge, or approves the IRS levy on such residence by a written order of the court. So the basic law pertaining to the IRS tax levy is that the IRS can obtain a court order from a U.S. District Court and take a taxpayer's principal residence for unpaid taxes, and this includes penalties and interest. So for decades, this has not been the go-to collection strategy of the IRS, and this probably is because they don't like the optics or costs of owning real estate and having to manage it or sell it in the court steps. So that law might be nuanced for the danger faced by the taxpayer, that is from losing their home and other property for back taxes. So question 5, what about the taxpayer's money? I mean, like their money they make on their jobs, their unemployment income from the state, workers' compensation when they're injured on the job, and even their retirement income when they retire from their jobs. My question is, can the IRS take all of their money from all of these sources for unpaid back taxes? And the answer is that IRC section 6334 specifically exempts most of the categories of income that we just mentioned. And to explain this step by step through each category of income that was just mentioned, number one, wages. The IRC 6334 exemption is a bit nuanced, and any amount payable to or received by the taxpayer as wages or salary for personal services or as income derived from other sources are exempt from levy to the extent the total of all such payments paid or received by the taxpayer during the period do not exceed the exemption amount computed under IRC section 6334 subsection A9. So this computation is based on weekly compensation and the number of standard deductions. And so for taxpayers paid on some other basis, such as biweekly or semi-monthly, this maximum exempt amount computation is modified by that fact as well. So the bottom line is that the IRC 6334 exemption for wages and compensation is nuanced and must be accurately computed based on all the facts and circumstances relevant to the taxpayer's household and how often the taxpayer receives their wages or salary for personal services. So number 2, unemployment compensation received under any federal, state, or DC or Commonwealth of Puerto Rico law is exempt from an IRS levy. The IRS cannot take unemployment benefits for unpaid federal taxes, penalties, interest, and levy costs. Number 3, workers' compensation. No, the IRS cannot take workers' compensation benefits that the taxpayer receives under any federal, state, DC, or Commonwealth of Puerto Rico statute. So to continue, retirement benefits are nuanced under the Internal Revenue Code section 6334 because the exemption from IRS levy depends upon the source of the benefits. Annuity and pensions under the Railroad Retirement Act are exempt from tax levy under IRC 6334. Certain military pensions, in compliance with 38 United States Code section 1562, are also exempt from levy by the IRS under IRC section 6334. Certain other military service benefits and disability benefits may also be exempt from levy under IRC section 6334. But the attorney believes that it's more nuanced where the taxpayer may have to actually request this exemption under the penalties of perjury. Military disability payments are not so readily exempted from levy. The veteran with a disability must request this exemption in writing. So this is all a wonderful presentation of what exemptions from levy might apply to individuals, retirees, and veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces. So now let's discuss the tax exemption provision that we have been going through with respect to business property and right to property. So our business assets, such as tools, boots, hard hats, books, equipment, furnishing, and things like that, also exempt from the IRS tax levy for business back taxes. This includes income taxes, payroll taxes, and excise taxes. So right now we're talking about all kinds of federal taxes. What business assets are protected from the IRS levy when the business owes back taxes? So let's summarize the impact of the IRS levy authority on a business operating asset. IRC section 6334 protects the tools and books necessary to operate the business or trade from a tax levy. But as in so many of the personal or household exemptions under IRC 6334, the business tools and books and items used in the trade or business are only protected up to a maximum value of $3,125. And this amount is low in today's marketplace, and it has also not changed in decades. Some protection, I suppose, is better than none. Other business property enjoys limited exempt from levy, but that exemption is subject to levy if approved by a U.S. District Court in a written order. Business assets also can be taken by the IRS. Business assets also can be taken by the IRS in a levy action when approved in writing by the IRS District Director or Assistant Director as well. This means that the IRS can take business assets without any court involvement. Further, business assets can be taken when the IRS finds that the collection of the tax is in jeopardy, such as the real possibility of insolvency of the taxpayer. Bottom line, business property and rights to property seem to be open to tax levy action more so than they say a taxpayer's wages or unemployment benefits and homes. Taxpayers who receive a notice of intent to levy must seek a tax counsel fast because tax levies are a popular and very powerful tool in the IRS collection box. This can cut deep and it can prove to be a very effective way of collecting back taxes. It proves to be nearly impossible to get any property back once it's in the possession of the IRS. Taxpayers must exercise and defend themselves well before the IRS can take their property. So I'd like to thank Attorney Jackson for this comprehensive and informative presentation on the Internal Revenue Service tax levies and specifically what property may be exempt from these IRS levies. Our viewers who want to see more videos like this one can subscribe to our channel and also listen to our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever they listen to their podcasts. You can also follow our blogs at www.cjacksonlaw.com. And you can see our details in our description box. It includes our phone number and our location. And this is the end of the video for now. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to inform you about what property of a taxpayer is exempt from an IRS tax levy. Like I said, if you desire to learn more about this topic, you can go to our website at www.cjacksonlaw.com. Thank you. Bye.